You know, some people leave their mark on a city. Others might change a whole country. But every once in a while, someone comes along who just completely rewires the world itself. How we travel, how we trade, how we connect with each other. Today, we're going to talk about one of those people, a true giant of the Industrial Revolution whose work you've almost certainly come across, maybe without even realizing it.
To get a sense of just how huge this guy was, let's jump to the present day for a second. Back in 2002, the BBC asked the British public a pretty simple question: who's the greatest Briton ever? Now, you'd think the list would be topped by names like Churchill or Shakespeare or maybe Darwin, right? And yeah, they were on the list. But the man we're talking about today, well, his ranking was just staggering.
He came in at number 2, second place, right behind Winston Churchill. Just let that sink in for a minute. This guy was voted as greater than the scientists who reinvented our understanding of life in the universe and the writers who practically invented the modern English language. And this is him, Isambard Kingdom Brunel, the man in the iconic top hat standing there so confidently in front of these enormous iron chains. And those aren't just any chains, by the way. Those are the launching chains for his monster of a steamship, the SS Great Eastern. This photo, it's just perfect. It captures the man completely, a master of iron and steam, dwarfed only by the sheer scale of what he himself created.
So that's the big question for us today, isn't it? Who was this engineer? What on earth did he build that left such a deep mark on the world that a century and a half after he died, people would still say he's one of the greatest of all time?
To really get who Brunel was, you have to go right back to the beginning. And for him, that beginning wasn't some quiet apprenticeship in a workshop. Nope, it was a baptism by fire. Or maybe more like a baptism by flood, deep underneath one of the busiest rivers in the world.
When he was just in his early 20s, Brunel was working as an assistant engineer for his dad, Mark, on a project that most people thought was completely insane: digging a tunnel under the River Thames in London. This wasn't just any other tunnel. Nothing like it had ever been built before, and it was unbelievably dangerous.
I mean, the risk here was just off the charts. They were digging through soggy gravel, basically. The tunnel flooded catastrophically, not just once but twice. People were killed. In one of those floods, Brunel himself was seriously injured and nearly drowned. He actually had to take 6 months off just to recover. So right from the get-go, this guy was staring risk right in the face, engineering at the absolute limit of what was humanly possible.
So after being forged in the dark and the mud under London, Brunel set his sights on completely transforming the world above ground, and this next project would become his most famous on land.
In 1833, he gets the job as chief engineer for the Great Western Railway. This was a revolutionary plan to connect London to Bristol with trains moving at speeds nobody had ever really seen before. And this was not a desk job for Brunel. No way. He personally surveyed the entire 120-mile route himself. He designed everything: the bridges, the tunnels, even stunning stations like Paddington, which you see right here.
But see, Brunel didn't just want to build a railway. He was obsessed with building the absolute best railway. This led to one of his most famous and, yeah, most controversial decisions. Most railways at the time were using a track width that we now call standard gauge, which was really just left over from old coal carts. Brunel did the math and argued for a much wider broad gauge. He knew it would give a faster, smoother, more stable ride and let him use bigger carriages. And he was right. But it put him in a head-to-head fight with pretty much the entire railway industry.
And this quote, this shows you everything about the scale of his thinking. For Brunel, the train tracks didn't just stop at the ocean. His real vision was a totally integrated travel system. The idea was you could walk into Paddington Station, buy one single ticket, take his train all the way to the coast, and step right onto one of his steamships, headed for New York. Just incredible.
And that amazing vision leads us right into the next great chapter of his career. I mean, if he could tame the land with iron rails, why couldn't he conquer the sea with iron ships?
So, over the next couple of decades, Brunel designed 3 ships. But these weren't just ships. Each one was a revolution. They didn't just break records. They completely rewrote the rules for what a ship could even be. Each one was a deliberate, massive leap forward.
First up was the SS Great Western. Now, at the time, a lot of people were convinced that a steamship could never carry enough coal to cross the whole Atlantic. Brunel's calculations showed the opposite. The bigger the ship, the more efficient it would be. Well, the Great Western proved him right. It steamed into New York after 15 days with tons of coal to spare, proving once and for all that regular transatlantic steam travel was actually possible.
His next ship, the SS Great Britain, was an even bigger jump. This ship is pretty much considered the first modern ship in history. But what does that really mean?
Well, before the Great Britain, big ships were made of wood and pushed along by these giant, clumsy paddle wheels on the side. Brunel built his ship's hull entirely out of iron, and he powered it with a game-changing screw propeller at the back. Those two things, the iron hull and the propeller, became the blueprint for basically every single ship that came after, all the way to today.
And then came his final masterpiece, the SS Great Eastern. This thing wasn't a ship. It was a floating city. It was 5 times bigger than any ship that had ever been built. It was designed to carry 4,000 people from England all the way to Australia without having to stop for fuel. It was so massive, it stayed the biggest ship on the planet for 40 years. It never really worked out as a passenger ship, but it found its true purpose laying the very first telegraph cable across the Atlantic, physically connecting Europe and America with information for the first time ever.
Brunel's life was just this incredible whirlwind of amazing achievements. But that kind of relentless, nonstop drive, well, it came at a price, both for his projects and for him personally.
The man was a complete workaholic. He was famous for smoking something like 40 cigars a day and sleeping for only a few hours a night. He even had these bizarre accidents, like the time he was doing a magic trick for his kids and accidentally swallowed a coin that got stuck in his throat. The only way they could get it out was to strap him to a board and flip him completely upside down. But that punishing lifestyle eventually caught up with him. In 1859, right before the Great Eastern was about to set sail, he had a massive stroke. He died just 10 days later. He was only 53.
He never even got to see some of his most beautiful projects finished. The amazing Clifton Suspension Bridge in Bristol, which was one of his earliest designs, was only completed after he died. His engineering friends raised the money to build it as a memorial to him.
This quote from his obituary just sums it all up so perfectly. His vision was always for the nation, for the future, for pushing the boundaries of what humans could achieve. But his projects were so huge, so ambitious, so expensive that they often lost money. He was an engineer at heart, not an accountant. He was chasing perfection, not just profit. And as the newspaper said, Brunel could never stoop.
And yet you just can't argue at his legacy. That Thames Tunnel, it's now part of the London Overground system. The main lines of his Great Western Railway, they're still being used by high-speed trains today. His ships set the stage for modern global trade and communication. The man physically built the world we live in.
Which brings us right back to that final, big question. When you look at a life this huge, this impactful, what's the lesson? How does one person actually do all of that?
The answer, I think, is right there in that photograph. You change the world by mastering the tools of your time, for sure. But more than that, you do it by having a vision so massive it seems impossible to everyone else, and then having the sheer, stubborn, relentless ambition to make it real.